Welcome to the WAVIT podcast recap, where we discuss the latest WAVIT podcast.
We're here to offer women in AV and IT valuable resources for your professional development. Hi, I'm Carol Feely-Vario, and I'm a founding member of WAVIT. I'm a project manager with 20 years experience in the construction and AV industries.
Hi, I'm Caroline Dunn, and I am Vice President of Marketing at WASIGA. So let's talk about episode number 1. It was titled, Who is WAVIT? And with our hosts, Chrissy Sarah and Lex Evans.
So the guests on podcast episode 1 were Althea Ricketts, who's the VP of Corporate Initiatives at Shore, and Gina Sansevero, VP of Marketing and Corporate Comms at Atlas IED.
In episode 1, we introduced WAVIT and the upcoming mentoring program, and we will link over to that original episode in case you missed it. So my question to you, Carol, is what really stood out to you in episode 1?
Well, first, there were some brilliant women all brought together at InfoComm, which is, of course, the place to get together. Great conversations about how to network, particularly in a large conference like InfoComm, who to talk to, how to talk to people, how to approach people. But the conversation then turned into how do you handle inappropriate situations? How do you handle harassment or inappropriate comments? And just a really wonderful, deep discussion on finding your own voice and being able to stick up for yourself and represent others and stick up for each other. And it was really invaluable advice from some women who've had some great experience in this industry and how it's handled overall and how they handle it. And particularly some folks who might be new to the industry or younger in their careers may not have the opportunities, and hopefully they never have to, but we know it's going to happen. And how do you handle those situations when they come up?
So this weekend, I was talking to one of my friends. Her name's Elizabeth. And you and I, as we were preparing for this podcast, we kind of talked about our names. I go by Caroline.
Right. And my name is Carol Ann, and I don't use the Ann.
But in this day and age, and I don't think this is any different in any generation, your identity is so important. What you want to be called is important. And so are your pronouns.
Right. And I go by she, her for my pronouns.
And I think it's important when I have a coworker who wants to be addressed with certain pronouns or wants to be their name, they want to be called Carol in this scenario, that I be respectful and call them Carol. And I refer to you as she, her, right?
I have 14 years of Catholic school under my belt. And even in Catholic school, our teachers asked us if you had a nickname and what would you like to be called? Part of that, I think, is being a New Yorker, and we all had nicknames. Part of that is also, what's the big deal, right?
Yeah,
my name is Carol Ann. I'd rather
your identity,
right?
Yeah. So my friend, her name is Elizabeth, and she goes by Elizabeth. That's what she wants to be called. So she had a boss who insisted on calling her Lizzie. Now it's one thing to try to shorten things up, or just have slang in your, where you are in the world. But she continually corrected her boss and said, I don't want to be referred to as Lizzie. That is not my name. My name is Elizabeth. And he continually addressed her as Lizzie. He thought it was cute. And he also thought it was a power play because he was the boss. He got to call his employees whatever he wanted to call them. Now, Carol, let me ask you, is that appropriate?
Absolutely not. It is. If she didn't mind and she didn't correct him, no harm, no foul, right? But she corrected him. She asked him professionally, I don't go by Lizzie. Please don't call me that. And that's weaponizing a diminutive form of someone's name, right? That's definitely the power play. Is that good leadership? No. Right? Leadership is about respecting the people on your team. That's just being a bully.
Absolutely. So I think that after watching the episode, I think I'm somebody I'm okay standing up for myself, but I have coworkers, I have friends, and when they are in these type of situations, Carol, can you advise me as to how I can be a better ally to my coworkers?
Allyship is so important in what we do, right? That's why organizations like WAVIT exist. It's a group of people with a like-minded condition, right? We're women. That's it. And how do we support each other as we move forward in these things, right? Keeping your ear out, listening to how people are addressed. If someone is constantly calling someone by a name they don't like, or you make up cutesy nicknames, right? This familiarity, that kind of stuff happens in teams, and that's fine, right? But if you hear it, you can correct that behavior. If you're sitting at the table and someone is saying, "Oh, well, Lizzie said," and like, nobody calls her Lizzie. Please stop that. Like, she doesn't like it. She's told us she doesn't like it. We don't need to do that here. And
How about if this boss calls her Lizzie and I say, "Oh, Lizzie, you mean Elizabeth, right?"
right. I don't think she goes by Lizzie, right? There's ways to correct it and still be, you don't have to be a monster, right?
Be professional about it.
Be professional about it, right? And just even putting those seeds in there, that proves that like other people are sticking up for her, right? Other people are with her. And how supportive does that feel when someone sticks up for you, right? Like if you're speaking in a meeting and you're talking about something you're very familiar with, or talking about an initiative that you own, and someone keeps interrupting you, right? Someone else in the room can say, "Hold on, I was listening to Caroline. She had some really great points. Can we let her finish?" Right? Like you can represent each other, and you don't have to be the team leader or the boss to do that, right? Like leadership is not about position. Leadership is about how you approach a team and how you approach your work, and treating people respectfully, calling people what they want to be called. How easy is that? That's the easiest thing to do. Right? I remember when we started this, I was like, is it Caroline or Carolyn? How do you pronounce it? Because that's important to get it right. It's also, your name is in your email. If people can't look at your email to spell your name, how frustrating is that, right? It's right in front of you.
Or in this podcast where we typed in our names at the bottom and you can clearly see.
Right? And asking people, and sometimes there's a role of familiarity where you shorten someone's name, or culturally that happens where your name gets shortened. And typically it doesn't bother me, right? It's not, when people call me Hun or whatever, I'm sure, whatever, no problem, right? But it's about the context, and it's about it, like I said, it's about it being weaponized. I feel like that boss weaponized a diminutive
Absolutely.
form of her name to make her smaller. And we're not here to be smaller. We're here to take up space. We're here to take up the space that we deserve to take. Right.
Absolutely.
And by making someone feel small and shortening their name or making their name silly, you're making them silly and you're making them smaller. And that's not leadership, right? Leadership is about building people up and making sure they have the space to take up. I'm almost 6 feet tall. I'm not a small person, right? It took me a long time to take up space because I always felt like I had to be in the back of the room. School photos, I was in the back.
Because you're tall. Because they say tall people in the back.
People in the back, right? So I always relegated myself to the back. So how did I find a voice to stick up for myself? Because I wasn't good at that, because I was relegated to the back of the room, right? So, and I know you have no problem speaking up for yourself. Where did you find that strength?
Well, I went to engineering school for 6 years. I did a bachelor's, master's, and you would not imagine the amount of mansplaining I had to listen to for 6 years. Now, the advantage of going to an engineering school is, there are grades and, tests, and I did really well on tests. And so I learned to speak up for myself. Oh, you only got an 80 on that test? Oh, poor thing. I got a 93. Oh, let's see. Maybe you should listen to me the next time we work on homework. So, and then that totally just shut them down. And I kind of learned to just really stick up for myself. Like, hey, all right, that's great. You bragged about yourself, but let's talk about the facts. Let's talk about, what's important right now, and try to just get that conversation back on track. Hey, let's talk about being productive. Hey, what's our goal here? What are we trying to accomplish in this meeting? Why don't we get back to that?
Right. And turning that conversation to the task, not the fluff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Althea had an unbelievable comment that kind of knocked me over a little bit in the episode 1, where she did talk about being intimidating, right? And she's incredible and she's brilliant, and we're so lucky, right, to have her as a representative of WAVIT and to avail ourselves of her leadership skills. And she said that people tell her a lot that she's intimidating. And she said, no, I'm not intimidating. You're intimidated. And
Absolutely.
you, it goes back to the taking up space, right? You belong here. You belong in this world. You deserve to take up the space that everybody else takes up. And if people are offended by you being in the room,
Too
that's
bad,
not
so
up
sad.
that's not up to you, right? That's up to them, right? And that's their reaction and their feeling. And when you're looking at allyship, that's the sort of thing that like letting people have that space and letting people, saying to people, oh, Caroline was talking, please let her finish. You can be an intern and still say that. You're not wrong to
Yeah.
stick up for someone else in the team, right? And bolstering each other up. There's so many times where, I'd be sitting in a meeting. I'm not even talking about women in AV or women or men versus, it doesn't matter. I'm talking allyship is allyship across the board. I had a project manager on my team who was just getting beat up by the client. It was terrible. And as opposed to sort of like yelling at the client, saying like, "Hey, you can't beat up my people," we worked so close together with this project manager, and we really built his confidence. And that's what he needed, right? He needed that development. He needed that support, and he needed to know that his opinion mattered and his knowledge was a value to the team. Um, and allyship, about bolstering each other up. And it wasn't a us versus a client sort of thing. It was just the client was a little bit of a bully and saw him as,
Easy pickings.
wounded gazelle in the Serengeti and just wanted to jump on it.
Yeah, it's a power play. Once again, people see that. And so, but anyway, thank you so much for offering me some advice on what I can do at work to be a better ally. I definitely want to implement that. But the next thing we want to do on this podcast is talk about book recommendations. So I think you've got a great book recommendation. We want to segue into, so what do you do with this? And so we want to offer you some resources. And so, Carol, tell me about some resources or the book recommendation you have as a good segue after this episode.
So I read this book a few years ago. This copy is called Just Work. It has been recently updated, and it is now called Radical Respect. This is a second book in a series. The first book, so Kim Scott is the author. It's brilliant. She wrote a book called Radical Candor about working in a team and leadership and honesty in leadership. And we're not talking about being a drill sergeant. Again, building people up, letting people take space. But this is Just Work. And this is really how to handle, gives you some great tips and great advice on how to handle inappropriate situations. And
perfect.
Do you have a client who's coming on to you on a project? How do you handle it? Right? How do you navigate through those somewhat muddy waters? I also have an honorable mention of When Women Lead by Julia Borstein. She is the lead tech consultant for CNBC, and she has crowdsourced some beautiful stories of women in leadership and how having a woman in leadership and how women use their intuitiveness and their ability to read rooms to really effectively lead teams.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that book recommendation.
So we have the upcoming episode 2 is will be up in a couple weeks, I believe. 2 weeks.
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe.
If you have questions about how to handle your inappropriate situation, please submit it to If You Ask Us, and there should be a link, hopefully, for you to submit that, and you can submit it anonymously too. And there you have it. We're Carol and Caroline, aka Team CNC, bringing you episode recaps
and the best business resources for women in WAVIT. Please subscribe to the WAVIT podcast so you don't miss a thing.
Thank you.
Thank you.